Welcome to HB Tuner's Ford Gen 2 Coyote Training Part 13. In this tutorial, we're going to be breaking down the differences between stoichiometric, air, fuel, and lambda. These are always confusing as you're getting into tuning. If you're starting off, you have no idea about tuning. This is something that's oftentimes very confusing. So I'm going to break this down using an Excel spreadsheet calculator so we can see exactly how this fits together and how it fits into our Ford Gen 2 Coyote programming. Without further wait, let's jump in so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at understanding our Stowage Afr programming in our Gen 2 Coyote applications, also breaking down why we want to work in units of Lambda and what units of Lambda actually represent in terms of our fueling target. All right, let's jump in here. We're going to open up a calibration file just so we can follow along with a couple key points, some tables, some scalar values in our calibration file for the tutorial. We're going to be working heavily in our Excel spreadsheet though for this particular training module. Let's go and jump up here to our file open, and we can open up any of our calibration files in our Mustang example files subfolder. You can even open up your calibration file if you've read that out of your engine control module for your vehicle. In this case, I'm going to stick to a 2016 Mustang folder and open up any of these files. Let me just open up a 2016 Mustang GT for reference here. Again, choose any of the files in here or any files throughout any of the other training, course folder here. Doesn't really matter. Let's click open and we have our file open now. So I'm going to move into our engine tab here and I'm going to jump from our general into fuel. And from fuel, I'm going to move in here under the general tab. We have our value here, Stowage Afr. This is one of the singular most important values to program to make sure our fuel and airflow model is correct. This is going to act as an overall fuel multiplier within our air and fuel model. I'll explain what this means here in just a few minutes, but understand that this is extremely important. We want to make sure this value is right before we begin doing any calibrating or tuning. Now, Stoich Afr, very important. We also have under power enrichment our watt lambda tables. This specifies what we want our target mixture to be at under full throttle conditions. And then we're also going to be referencing here open loop base, our fuel base cold table. This specifies at idle part throttle conditions where we're essentially in full closed loop, where we're operating and for emissions purposes, for fuel economy purposes, what we want our target lambda to be at, target air fuel to be at. In this case, we're working in units of lambda, and we can see what that table value shows right here. So now that we've touched on the three different areas of the calibration file we're going to be referencing here, let's jump into our Excel spreadsheet because this is where we need to spend the majority of our time for this training module, understanding units of lambda and understanding our Stoich Afr and how that fits into the programming here and why it's so important. So I'm going to move from our calibration file here over into our Excel spreadsheet. In here, the Excel spreadsheet, HB Tuners 2015 to 2017 Rev 1, that's what you'll find in your HB Tuners Gen 2 Coyote course folder. Open this up to follow along for the tutorial. You'll find I'm in the third tab here labeled Stoich. The tab location may vary depending on how I change things up here by the time the course releases, but this is the tab we want to be in order to discuss how this fits together. First thing we want to turn our attention to here is our column with our values here, lambda, and we see different scales, these different values underneath it. This is going to illustrate the purpose of wanting to tune and work in units of lambda. Now, you may be familiar with units of air fuel if you've ever looked at a wideband display. Widebands will always show you a petrol air fuel scale. It can get kind of confusing if you're referencing something like lambda, where the value is 0.8 or 1.2. How does that correlate? What does that mean if we're looking at a wideband gauge and it's showing us 14.7 or 12 to 1 or 18 to 1 air fuel? How does it all relate together? Well, that's what we're going to use this column for here in our Excel calculator. Now, if we're talking about our stoichiometric value for where we want to run our engine at, that's going to be on a petrol air fuel scale, 14.7. So if you ever looked at a wideband display, you know your engine's running correctly at idle and part throttle if that wideband is showing you 14.7. Well, that's the equivalent of our lambda amount of 1.0 lambda. Now, looking throughout the rest of our columns here, if we're at 1.0 lambda, our petrol air fuel equivalent would be 14.7. If we're running on pure ethanol, that would be 9 to 1. Methanol would be 6.45. Propane, 15.67. Methane, 17.19. And hydrogen, 34.3. This is the relative stoichiometric scale for these different types of fuel. Now, Working in units of lambda allows us to just know one set of number values in order to specify what we want our target mixture to be at under part throttle or full throttle conditions. So if we're talking about idle and part throttle, generally speaking, we want to be at 1.0 lambda. That gives us the best compromise for tailpipe emissions, power output from our engine, and fuel consumption, all things that we want to worry about. So we can see here, depending on what type of fuel we're on, if we just know that 1.0 lambda is stoichiometric, we don't need to know these individual Stoich points for these different types of fuel. Things get a little bit more confusing if we're talking about going to a richer target mixture. Let's say we get into full throttle conditions. We need to richen up our mixture. Well, if we go here and we put a value of 0.8, that might be appropriate for our application if we want to get into full throttle. That's commanding a richer mix. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.